I am a 35 years old female just got engaged to my fiancé 37 male Sam. We do not live together because we're waiting till marriage given he and his family are highly conservative Christians but they're really nice and lovable people. I had plans to spend NYE with Sam, but he said he was out for NYE dinner celebration with his parents then called me again inviting me to join them, and I happily did. His parents were there, they welcomed me and ordered many dishes and desserts and drinks. We celebrated and had great time, that is until it was time to pay. I pulled my wallet out of my bag letting them know that we'll split the check between us. Sam mumbled, "No, you don't have to, we invited you," but I insisted. He and his parents then stared at me. I asked what was wrong and both mother-in-law and father-in-law said they didn't have money on them. I was shocked. I turned to Sam and he said he too forgot his wallet at home and didn't bring enough money to cover even on round of drinks. His dad then laughed nervously, "Right, so guess we should let the doctor pay." I was taken aback. I said, "I'm sorry, but no, this is just so much money to spend on one dinner by myself, and I didn't think I was expected to pay the entire bill." Sam said I should pay and he'd pay me back later, but I said no since I know he will have to get a job to pay that much money. I said, "I'm sorry, but this isn't the first time I've been put in this situation by him and family, where I'm expected to rescue them after they somehow forgot their wallets and expect bothers to pay hundreds for their extravagant dinner." I told them I'll only pay for what I had and that's it. He and his parents were shocked. They started arguing about how I have the potential to pay right there and then, but I was acting as if they were strangers, not family. But that doesn't mean I'm obligated to pay. How could someone go out to a fancy restaurant, order so many dishes, desserts and drinks without bringing money? Sam begged that I just do it and call it a night, but I refused. The argument got heated, then I got up and walked out. Sam called later at 2 a.m. basically yelling that I ruined NYE celebration and made his parents suffer, because I refused to pay the entire bill. AMD instead acted selfishly and paid only for myself, after they were gracious enough to invite me. I told him how unfair it was for me to pay. Even if I have a good salary doesn't mean I want to spend it all on fancy dinner. He didn't reply, he just said he'll pray that my parents will let this go, and not resent me after I basically damaged the relationship with them. I felt awful thinking I should have covered the bill instead of leaving. I have a home daycare. I like to think I'm pretty lenient, but I do have one big rule: don't make me the bad guy. I understand we might have different rules, but don't make your child resent me by not backing me up. Anyway, another rule is I don't allow outside toys or electronics. Kids can bring a stuffed animals for nap if they're sleeping on rest mats, but I don't want to be responsible if something gets broken. Years ago, I used to let kids bring whatever. Then a cheap McDonald's toy broke by accident, kid was upset and mom got mad at me. So now it's a hard rule. Most are okay with it. But I have a new kid, whose mom wanted him to bring his tablet because he needs it. I said sorry, but no. I'm not going to be responsible for it. We went back and forth, but finally she just says fine. But every morning, he's crying because she took his tablet from him in the car. She always gives me this look and says, "Miss Lucy says no tablet." I always try to say we have plenty of toys, but the kid spends the whole morning sulking. I've talked to mom, asked her to leave it at home and not even put it in the car, but she says he needs it. It's been a month and yesterday was the straw that broke the camel's back. Kid came in crying as usual. I tried my usual redirection, which didn't work. Mom was giving me a look of, "See what you did?" Then she had the nerve to say to him, "I know you need your tablet, we've talked about this before, Miss Lucy is strict." That pissed me off. I ended up telling her to take him home right then and there. She was shocked and tried to stammer. He was my first kid of the day, so there was no scene. I just handed back his backpack, said he was no longer a student of mine, and began to pack his extra clothes and the sippy cup he kept. Mom was in tears as she left. My husband thinks she was right. I'm too strict and should have broken policy instead of causing drama. There was no medical need for the tablet. It was all just that he wanted it. I'm not making a waiver for electronics. That won't stop other issues with the tablets, such as jealousy and drama, so my "don't make me the bad guy" rule has been misunderstood, partly as I worded it poorly. I don't expect blind obedience. No one has to agree with my rules. They can challenge them, to me. But to their kid, I'd rather them explain everyone has different rules and that while they're with me, things will be different. I do the same with parents who have different rules than mine. I never say they're wrong or strict, I say that we have different rules at school and to listen to mom and dad. This is also a policy for pacifiers, bottles, and potty training. I'll approach any of these milestones when you ask, but you have to be working on it at home too. The kid won't progress if they only go pee on the potty at home. And the child was not autistic or non-verbal. If he was, an exception would be made. I returned her money for the last few days of January and texted an apology for terminating without notice, and said I hope she was able to find care. She said she left him at her mom's. She also asked if there was any way I'd reconsider, and I said no. We had a long phone call and no minds were changed, but it was the ending we should have had. I am a 19-year-old female. I have an estranged grandpa more or less. He's my dad's father, but my dad hardly had a relationship with him. I have 2 other siblings, one younger and one older. My grandma divorced my grandpa when my dad was only 10. So he lived with my grandma his whole life in a different state and didn't see him. When he got older he saw him a little more, and my grandpa started coming around a little bit more as well. He'd stay for a week at a time and then go home. He was an old, bitter man, to be honest. He never got remarried and lived his whole life in his coastal town with the same friends he'd had his whole life. He wasn't pleasant to be around and could hold grudges longer than anyone I've ever met. But regardless of this, he was filthy rich. He owned a successful business that he sold for $1 million. He retired after selling, but his house sits on an island as well as the biggest piece of land on the island. So it sold for well over $3 million. I was never close with my grandpa, but I took after his sister who is in right now, and he adores her. He always told me that he was proud to see me follow in her footsteps. He died a few months ago. Since then, my family has been torn apart. He left everything to me. He essentially liquidated all of his assets, and it ended up being close to $8 million. I was shocked. I didn't and still don't know what to do with the money, but I'm going to save it. My dad and stepmom as well as my siblings are hounding me to split the money with them. I just can't do it. My dad is an alcoholic who never said anything nice about his dad. Despite him being bitter, my grandpa actually bought my dad a $300,000 house. My dad would 100% drink away any money given to him. As far as my siblings, my brother has full financial support from my grandma as he is the favorite, and he's very wasteful and ungrateful. He never talks to me and always is very mean to me when he does. My little sister is the only person I've actually considered. She's very young, and that's really the only thing stopping me. Her mom is money-oriented and would take the money from her. So I'm waiting until she turns 18, and I offered to pay for her college. But now my family is telling me I'm unfair and the money doesn't belong to me and I'm not deserving of it. That I'm too young and I'll waste it on cars and clothes. I don't agree, and now they're all threatening to cut me off and never speak to me. Or even sue me if I don't give them all a chunk of the money. I don't know what to do, and I'm buckling under pressure here. I've already had 2 police officers out to my house because my dad is claiming I stole the money from him. Everything was through an attorney. I know I did nothing wrong legally, but morally? So, my fiancé took up cooking during quarantine. We used to cook little and instead ate a lot out of the house. We could afford it and tended to eat healthy. Of course, we can both cook, but given our busy schedule, it was easier to eat out. Also, to be honest, I don't really like cooking and consider it a chore to be avoided. I love food, but there are other things that I would rather do in my own time. Due to quarantine, my fiancé has decided to cook more and has found that she enjoys it a lot. This is great. I am happy for her that she has discovered something new that brings her joy. Turns out she's pretty good at it too, and she cares about learning new skills, etc., so I benefited too. I still don't really like cooking myself, as I said, so in exchange for her putting all that effort into cooking, I help her out by paying for takeout in the evenings when she doesn't feel like cooking, and also I do everything else, wash the dishes, clean the table, etc. on the days she cooks. To the best of my knowledge, she agreed that this was an appropriate compromise, and of course, if she felt it was unfair, I would be happy to fill the gap in other ways. But she seemed to enjoy it. As her culinary experiments expanded into baking and became more complex overall, she began to involve me in cooking. I would go into the kitchen to have a drink and check it out, and she would say, "Oh, could you help me chop this while I fry this?" Or something like that. I cut carrots for her or something like that, chatted with her about food, and then went back to my business. I didn't mind it at all. But gradually I became her sous chef, especially when she wants to cook food together. Keep in mind that her culinary experiments are complex and sometimes take 2 or more hours. So my whole evening goes into these culinary endeavors, and it happens several times a week. On top of that, she tends to boss me around in the kitchen and can be a little rude. As you can probably guess, we got into a fight over this. I told her that I don't like her attitude in the kitchen when I help, and I don't like to cook in general. I would feel better helping her if she wasn't so rude to me. But honestly, I don't want to spend 8+ hours every week cooking. It's not my hobby, it's hers. If she wanted me to take part in cooking, I bought everything or cooked something simple. She was very upset. She said it was unfair, that I was enjoying the fruits of her labor but not doing my part. And that cooking took 2 hours and dishwashing / cleaning only half an hour. I told her that it was her decision to cook very complex dishes and that I would be happy if she made a simple pizza or roast. After a certain point, the sophistication of her dishes moves into hobby territory. And I resent being made to feel like a bad partner because I don't want to spend a few evenings on her hobby. We haven't really worked it out. I actually bought / cooked my own food a few times so I didn't enjoy the fruits of her labor. But that seemed to upset her even more, and our refrigerator started to fill up with more leftover food than she could eat herself. Another time I helped her but told her I had to go on video chat at 8 p.m. and she got upset when I actually stopped helping, and left even though I told her beforehand. I'm afraid I told her somewhat caustically that I was not her sous chef to command the kitchen. I tried to discuss it with her again when we felt calmer. I told her that I liked that she found a new hobby. But it's her hobby and I can't help it and don't want to feel obligated to do it. She countered that it was not feminist of me to put the cooking on her and benefit from it without helping her. The feminist connection doesn't make much sense to me because neither of us used to cook much. And she decided to take up cooking herself, but of course I didn't tell her that. I told her that if she wanted to discuss the division of labor in our household, we could do so and come up with something new that reflected the fact that she now cooks more. We tried to do this, but she wanted to count all the time she spends cooking as time around the house. So, according to her ideal distribution of housework, she spends over 10 hours cooking just dinner each week, which somehow leaves me with almost all other chores around the house. I told her I didn't like it because cooking complicated meals is a hobby. It's not fair to say that 6 / 10 hours of her housework is actually her hobby, and I have to do the equivalent amount of real housework if that makes sense. So we are in a bit of an impasse. Am I really a bad feminist? I don't think I'm wrong. I'm very familiar with emotional labor, mental stress, and all that, but I may be wrong. I love this woman and obviously want to marry her. But we are usually good at making logical decisions, and this is the first time we have had such a disagreement. I don't know how to get her to understand the line between cooking as a necessary activity and cooking as a hobby. P.S. The fiancé has taken up cooking gourmet meals as a hobby. But now it becomes my responsibility to help out and do more housework that I don't think I should.